Hello, everyone. Welcome to our presentation today. Our presentation is called How to Pass a Math Class. My name is Luis Estrada, and I am a peer mentor tutor here at MSU Denver. And I'm going to go ahead and give you just let me go ahead and get into slide mode. Okay. All right. So, how to pass a math class. So this topic is just going to show you the basics of how to perform well in any math class, whether it be um, your first math class, or it'll be a more complicated math class, or you're just wondering or trying to get started in math. So let's get started. So the breakdown of today's presentation is going to be, I'm going to introduce myself. We're going to be learning how to prepare for math before you get into the math class or before the semester starts. Then we're going to be preparing for lecture, and then we're going to find out what to do during lecture to make sure that you're actually, attentive and paying attention and doing what you're supposed to, so we can get some retention. Then we're going to talk about what to do after lecture, and then the big one is how to handle tests, how to prepare for tests, some common myths about tests, and how not to follow those common pitfalls. And at the end of the video, I'm going to give you some resources if this presentation kind of sparked your interest, kind of tutoring and other options. And I will also give you the password for the quiz at the end of the presentation, so please stick around. All right, so we're going to start off of who am I? Like I said, my name is Luis. I am a senior here at MSU Denver. I study electrical engineering technology. So this kind of breaks down what people think I do, and kind of what the different perspectives on electrical engineering is, and it's a lot of programming. My career involves a lot of math. It's safe to say. And math sort of becomes a language for engineers. A lot of different trades and a lot of different careers also use mathematics in different ways. Some may use statistics, others may use just hardcore calculus and other things, but math is pretty useful in all walks of life, whether you believe it or not. So let's get started. Okay, so some key beliefs I have about math and, kind of my core philosophy when it comes to tutoring math or tutoring any, quote unquote difficult subject is that math is supposed to be hard. Okay, so no one is born good at math, and it is very much a learned skill. I wasn't always good at math. At a point in my life, I would say I'm one of those people who hated math. But I really learned that it's more about practice and patience than it is more about being born a genius. Again, depending on your trade or your field, you do not have to be a mathematician. So it doesn't mean you don't have to learn any math. It just means you don't have to go up into the crazy level of calculus or beyond. And I believe that asking for help makes you a stronger learner, makes you a stronger person, and it makes you a stronger student. In the beginning, I didn't ask for a lot of help, and my grades definitely showed. I can tell you that from personal experience in my life, asking for help has definitely strengthened my abilities as an engineer, as a student, and as an overall person. Okay, so the first thing we have to talk about is before the semester starts. So let's say that you are coming into school in the fall, which is in a couple months, and you think about, okay, well, I'm taking this difficult math class. Let's say I'm taking college algebra, and I honestly have never really liked math in high school. I never really liked math. I've kind of been putting it off. So what do I do? I know it sounds redundant, but the best way to prepare for a math class is to prepare before you take the math class. What does this mean? This means if you're taking college algebra, you might want to be reviewing basic math things like dividing fractions, the order of operations, PEMDAS, and just how to work with basic numbers so that when you get to the class, you're a bit in the loop when it comes to that. Math courses often build on previous concepts, and the ones I mentioned right now are the ones that are kind of the cornerstones of the subject. And the reason I tell a lot of students this, and I know it's difficult, especially during summer break, but if you're going into a math class where it's college algebra, it is almost already expected that you know some algebra before you go in there. You at least know how to work with negative numbers and fractions and stuff like that. The reason I say to start preparing is because you don't want to be catching up while you have to absorb new material. You can do that, but it will be very difficult, and it'll put you through a lot of unnecessary pain. So starting before the class starts is best. Reviewing some math stuff. It doesn't have to be, Doesn't have to be complicated stuff. Just do 20 minutes of it, 30 minutes of it every day or a couple days a week to get prepared for that math class. And trust me, you will do better in the class. You'll be more interested in the class because you actually understand what's going on, and you will not feel the need to be panicked. Okay. So now let's say what happens. Now let's say that we're during the semester. So let's say it's the second lecture in. You already got over your you already went over your syllabus. It's no longer an introductory lecture. Now it's time for actual lecture and lessons. So the first thing I would do is, or you should do, and I should say, is you should skim over the textbook chapter, like noting at first like important formulas and theorems. So difference between math classes and regular classes is that in, for example, a literature class, you really have to read the book, absorb the material, get the main idea of the chapter, and do these things. Math and science textbooks and engineering textbooks in general don't have a plot. So you don't have to start from the beginning to the end. You can read from the end to the beginning. And the best thing about these books is that usually you don't have to highlight. Because the book already signals what important equations are. What you really need to understand is where the equations came from. What do they involve? It's very normal to understand everything before you've been to lecture because, again, you don't have a lot of context. The book is just there as an introduction. A good suggestion is to write down questions that you may have from reading the textbook and ask them in class. That way, when you get to class, you might not know everything, but you have sort of idea where you're going, and then in that asking that question will really fill your your head with the right idea instead of just going to class cold and not being able to ask any questions or have no idea what the context is or what anything is, and then you just stay in class not knowing anything, and then you leave class even more confused than when you went in. Okay, so what to do in lecture? So now that we've kind of prepared for lecture, and now that we're kind of more in we're more in the zone when it comes to math. We know that for example, we're going to be working on negative numbers. We know this. So lecture is, I stress this, is the place where the good amount of learning is done. That being said, like staying focused is critical, and I know it's hard to stay focused, especially in a subject you do not like. But the things that help me most during math lecture is taking good notes, quote unquote good notes. I will expand on this later. Asking questions. Asking questions is probably the best way to stay focused because if you're talking and if you're active, your brain will not off. You will be able to say, okay, well, this is what's going on, and you'll write down things, and you'll remember more stuff. Asking questions is probably the best way to be involved in class because it not only does it help you retain stuff, but it also shows the instructor that you're just not messing around, that you're actually there, that you want, that you're participating, and it's probably the best way to get the most out of lecture. Taking notes the right way. So now, again, taking notes could be an entire presentation on its own because the topic of notes is a huge one. But the biggest question I've been asked, or I have asked myself, or even other tutors, is do I write everything down or do I listen to the professor? And this is something that is sometimes personal taste, but taking notes in math is different than taking notes in other subjects because math is more of a practice-based concept. It's also a critical thinking concept. So, you don't have to write down everything the professor says because they're summarizing from the textbook somewhat. They're applying their own knowledge of it, and they're also giving you equations. These equations are already in the book, so you don't really need to rewrite every single equation. You don't need to rewrite everything they say. Best thing I would say is listen to the professor, try to follow along with the examples, know where the equations come from. More importantly than just writing down an equation. For example, if the professor in the class says, okay, we're gonna write the equation for this line, look at the process of getting the equation of the line, not the equation of the line itself. I suggest looking at the process, getting the process instead of just the equations themselves. Memorizing equations is not going to help you. More on that later. Okay, so now that we went to lecture, we listened, we took a little bit of notes, we asked questions, we did what we could in lecture and try to stay as focused as possible. I know it's really hard, especially now. The best thing to do after lecture is just go over your notes. And when I mean go over your notes, just like say, hey, what the heck was this? Try to kind of piece things together. Summarize what happened in lecture. You don't have to remember every single detail of lecture because it's impossible. Human memory is not perfect. Trust me, I know. Write down any other questions that you still may have, and try to contact the professor with these questions through email or whatever. Or if they're not available through email or office hours, wait until the next lecture. Usually professors, depending on the class, they will go over what you learned last lecture, kind of give you a brief summary, and you can ask them a question. Again, another great resource for you is if the instructor isn't available, or the professor just said, we got to move on, you can ask classmates before or after class. Your classmates are perhaps one of the better options as well, because they're also there with you, they're learning, and also if you ask them questions, it gives you kind of a perspective of what you're supposed to be learning, because everything is perspective. So getting someone else's perspective might fill in the gaps that you may have, or you may fill in their gaps, which is a great way to learn. For practice, because this is a math-based presentation, and this is a class that requires a lot of practice, you should work on similar example problems as to those seen in class. If it's like a beginning math course, there will be tons of example problems on the internet. If you got your textbook, that's probably the best use for a textbook. There are tons of example problems in the textbook, and that's probably the best way for you to learn and retain this stuff after class. Okay, so now we're going to be talking about the test. So it's the couple first weeks of the semester, and your big first test is coming up, and you're kind of nervous, and you feel unprepared, which is very common. Okay, so anxiety and dread come up a lot before and during tests, especially before finals. There are some common mistakes students make when we're studying for math, and the common belief is that these do good, but actually they do more harm. So, for example, a late night study session. So you gather up some friends, or you're by yourself, you have a cup of coffee, and you start studying all night, and your study session ends at 2 a.m, and then you end up going to the test, and you didn't do any better than you would have if you didn't study. This is because late night study sessions, especially if you're not a night person, is going to keep you up, and it's going to leave you tired. By the time you get to the test, you're going to be exhausted. You're not going to be able to focus. You're going to be more focused on, sleeping or food, which is not good. Cramming and memorizing. Cramming and memorizing is probably the most common technique we have all used at some point or another, or are currently using. Cramming and memorizing don't work, especially for math, because you will forget everything before the test. In my experience, memorizing all these formulas and equations are not going to help, especially if you don't know where these equations come from, especially if you don't know how they work, or if you don't know the technique behind them. People always ask me, do you memorize every formula you learn as an engineer? No, I've only memorized in a way because I practiced it so much that you remember them, but because you use them constantly. That's the only way I remember these formulas. But no, I have never tried to memorize anything. It doesn't work very well for me. Okay, so how to better prepare. So now that we know some bad habits when it comes to studying, the better habits are, begin preparing for the exam a week before it's scheduled at the latest. So let's say that your professor says, okay, our first test is going to be, for example, August 23rd, or it's too soon, let's say in September. So if you are preparing for the test the Sunday before the test, it's not going to really help you, because that doesn't give you enough time to go over the material and rework it. So at the latest, start working a week before the exam is scheduled to take place. Math exams, again, take more practice than memorization. So in math, depending on your class, there are only 10 kinds of problems. There are only 10 kinds of problems. Every other problem, the hundreds of problems you've seen, there's just variations of a couple of problems. So practice. That will make you perfect. Memorizing equations will not help you if you don't know how to work the problem. Instead of rereading chapters or reading chapters, work on example problems in the chapter and the problems at the end of the chapter. This, again, goes with the practice rather than memorization. You use class examples as practice. Please get a good night's sleep. I know that we have busy lives and we want to do as much as possible a day. I sometimes say, you know what, this can wait for tomorrow. And that's sometimes that you have to do. Your brain needs to recuperate. You need to be able to rest your body and your mind in order for you to be able to focus on the test. A big one for me was getting to campus at least an hour early, so I wouldn't feel rushed. So let's say that you did study, you prepared, but again, you're saying, oh well, my test is at 1:30. I'm gonna get there at 1:20, like 1:20. Again, if this is a community campus, if you're not driving here, and you're taking the light rail, you probably get here at 1:25. So that gives you what, 5 minutes to walk to the building, depending where you got off, and your mind takes time to adapt to new scenarios. So you're going to be focusing on the commute. You're going to be focusing on walking to campus, and by the time you get to the classroom, you're going to be thinking about just how rushed you were, and it'll take some time for you to adjust to the test. So get in there at least an hour early, so you will have kind of a preparation time before the exam. Eat breakfast or have a light meal before the exam. So if you have a morning class, let's say, for example, 8 a.m., which I have before, please try to get up at least at 6. Have good breakfast, and make sure that your stomach is full. If it's the afternoon, have a light meal because again, I mean, I don't know if this is different for everyone, but I get midday exhaustion, and you're gonna feel very sleepy, and you're not gonna be focused. The alternative is being hungry, which is not even better because you're gonna be hungry and thinking about food instead of about thinking for the test. So definitely have those things there. These steps will prepare you for an exam much better than staying up late or doing any of that stuff. So during the exam, so now that we're in the classroom, we got there early, we're feeling calm. Before any of these, remember, please just breathe. It's an exam. It is important, but remember, feeling anxious and feeling stressed are common, but they're not going to help in this situation. The best thing we can do is just keep a calm mind, try to be calm, breathe. If you're having anxiety, try to talk to your professor, say, I'm really anxious. Is there anything I can do? Breathe. So when the exam is being handed out, look through the entire exam. If the professor lets you, gauge the difficulty of each question. When you start the test, if you get stuck on one question, please move on and come back to that question later. Because you don't want to. Because remember, depending on the length of the class, you don't want to be stuck on one question, because then you're not going to be able to answer anything else. This next one I will emphasize with everything. Please do not leave anything blank. Partial credit is better than no credit. Most math classes do not have all multiple choice tests, so it'll be all handwritten, constructed response. So please, like I said, getting credit is better than getting a 0. So try to do that. Try to do that quickly. Another one is have a bottle of water with you. So you limit the times you have to leave the room and go to the water fountain. Again, this is also, please use a restroom before the exam. Like, for example, it's about 30 minutes before the exam, 15 minutes. Go to the restroom, take a break, do what you need to do, and then go in the room. And so you won't have to leave, because you spend time going to those 2 minutes you spent in the bathroom could have been used towards the test. And after all these, just give it the best effort possible. Sometimes life happens, and you try to do your best. And at the end of the day, we all do what's best with what we have. We don't have perfect times. Sometimes family comes in, we have emergencies, we have work, we have other situations. So sometimes the best thing you can do is give it your best shot. Okay, so we're kind of getting to the end here. And what if you're asking, what if I still don't get it? Like I said, sometimes life happens and we fall behind and struggle. I mean, if this is a case, the best thing you can do is reach out to your instructor. Again, this is the biggest no-brainer, people tell me, but a lot of people don't talk to their professors. And a common myth is that professors don't like questions. Again, instructors dislike quiet study halls or quiet lecture halls because they don't know if you're getting the material or not. In their minds, it's either these people are really quiet because they understand everything I'm saying, or they're just shy. They're too shy, or they don't want to ask me questions. So please try to use them as your first resource. If your professor is not helping, you can always come to us. Trio SSS, we have several peer mentor tutors that not only tutor math, but can also give you advice as a student, including myself. I'm always here to help. If we are not available for any reason, which is very rare, you can always go to the MSU Denver General Tutoring Center. You have free tutoring as a student here. If you come to the second floor where our center is, there is a tutoring center right before our office. Um, what if you're stuck? What if you're abroad or you're somewhere else? Please use Khan Academy. This is a super popular alternative. It's awesome for math. The advantage of this is that the guys on Khan Academy, you can rewind as much as you like, and you don't have to rush to write everything they're talking about. It gives you more time to learn the mechanics of the subject you're learning rather than just rushing through. These resources are not the whole list of resources, but I mean, I would suggest that you at least try to talk to your professor and come to Trio at least once to make sure that you know what the resources are. Okay, so that's the presentation. So you can go ahead and use this password, which is Math Rocks 101, and take the quiz on Blackboard. You've completed the presentation. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys have an awesome day.